In Matthew 5:31 and 32, Jesus says something that is often misunderstood and misused. He says, "Furthermore, it has been said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a woman who has been divorced commits adultery." The first thing I want you to notice here is that Jesus simply gives the grounds for a man to divorce his wife, not the other way around. Now, I'm aware of in the Gospel of Mark, Mark does give us the grounds for a woman can get a divorce. But here it's just the man, which is interesting, because in the time of Christ, it was almost impossible for a woman to divorce her husband. But it had gotten to the place where a man could divorce his wife for just about any reason. A little history on this. Back in Deuteronomy chapter 24, Moses gave permission for people to get a divorce. And the words that were used there is, if a man were married a wife and found her displeasing and found some uncleanness in her, that he was to write a certificate of divorce, give it to her, and the marriage was finished. It was that simple. Everything hinged on the definition of that word uncleanness or impurity. There were two schools of thought. One school interpreted it very narrowly to mean only adultery. But there was another school of thought that defined this impurity as just about anything, to the point where a man could divorce his wife if he didn't like the way that she kept the house. That would be considered impure among some. And as you can imagine, human nature being what it is, men who weren't happy with their wife tended to take the more liberal interpretation rather than the more conservative interpretation. It got to the place where, well, let me share with you a text in Matthew 19 where the Pharisees came to Jesus to test him. And listen to how they tested him. They were trying to trap him. They came with a question. They said, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" Notice what they say next. "Is it lawful to divorce his wife for just any reason?" There's that liberal interpretation of that word impurity. Listen to Jesus' answer. He said to them, "Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then, they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate." And I like what the old King James says, "Let no one put asunder." And they're asking Jesus about divorce, but notice where Jesus goes with this. He doesn't start with the grounds for divorce. He goes back to God's original intention for marriage. Originally, marriage was to be between a man and a woman who were equals with each other. They were to become like one flesh. It was to be a permanent and exclusive relationship, not one where you could write a certificate of divorce and just give it to her and it's over. It wouldn't be that simple. But notice what the Pharisees said to him. They said, "Why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away?" Notice the word command there. It's almost what they're saying, well, Moses told us that we have to divorce them, right? It's a command. But Jesus said, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so. So notice, for the Pharisees, it was a command. For Jesus, it was a concession because of the hardness of their hearts. God never meant divorce to be here. He meant it to be an exclusive relationship between two equals. For that to happen, we need God's grace. When Adam and Eve were created, there was no problem with them being equals. There was no problem because They weren't motivated by self. They were motivated by selflessness. They were filled with the Holy Spirit. They were there serving one another. When sin entered the picture, that became a problem. This oneness, this unity, not only became difficult, it became impossible. Only when we are filled with the love of God can we truly have this unity between a man and a wife and this equality. We're going to talk about this more in our next study. This is important. So we're going to go back to the book of Genesis, just like Jesus did, and explore that in a little bit more detail. Until then, make yourselves a great day.